Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Would you like even more content? Here's my Patreon. Now onto the stories. Case file number 1303, written by areceej, Wedding Rings Beyond This Universe. My wife had taken her engagement and wedding rings off over 2 years ago when she was pregnant, and when they started to become uncomfortable to wear. We thought we had placed it in the jewelry box. After about 6 months, when her fingers returned to normal, she went looking for the rings. They were nowhere to be found. We searched extensively throughout the house, including both of us searching all of her jewelry boxes and any other potential places. We would randomly search every few months in the same places again. Last week we looked at the jewelry box, and it was sitting in plain sight. Box both of us had searched extensively over the past 2 years. Where were the rings all this time? We don't have anyone that would be going through these items in our house other than us. Just odd. Case notes file 1303. Wedding Rings Beyond This Universe. So I really am wondering how many times it is where these DOP events, where things are exactly where you check them multiple times, can't be random. It has to be someone messing with us. And I mean, at least for me, I think it's a bit funny, but with wedding rings, maybe that goes too far. You don't want to feel like something that's special to you, that unique and irreplaceable, just disappeared. And then it's like gaslighting these people, right? Because you check this box, and most people don't know about glitches. So, I mean, if it happens to us, we would be annoyed, but we'd be like, okay, yeah, it's just DOP, it happens. Maybe it's an entity, maybe it's the universe spazzing out, who knows really, but it's not that surprising if it happened to us. But most people don't know about glitches. They have no clue. So to them, they would just think they're going nuts in a certain sense, or just like couldn't even see something right in front of their faces for years. So if it is an entity doing this, stop it, please. At least for things that are that important, Please. Wouldn't that be funny if like ghosts or entities or the developers are listening in to my own channel? This dude trying to figure things out and just piecing things together, but never having all the answers, all the pieces. Maybe that's the case. Bonus file written by tullyinturtleterror. Ghosts, gas leaks, and basement secrets. The first house I moved into out of high school while going to college was a very old, very small house in a town that dated back to the Civil War. I lived there with 3 other guys since rents were high, but we made it work. The house is built on a hill and had a small driveway in front with a U-shaped driveway in back. It had a full basement and was owned by someone with multiple rental properties in the area. They told us we had full access to the upstairs, but that they used the downstairs for storage and to never go down there because it was full of their stuff. We never questioned it because the rent for this particular location for our area was low. We were still technically on campus, but our house was surrounded by other college students, so we could have parties whenever we wanted to. Everything was great until we started having unwanted visitors. At first, things were pretty easy to ignore or completely write off. A roommate home by themselves would walk into a room and the lights would be on when they were home alone and hadn't flipped on any switches. Someone else would hear a faucet turn on and off in a room with no one in it. We tried to do what research we could at the time and found that water pressure can cause faucets to do some crazy things on their own, and that power surges can do similar things with flickering lights. Unfortunately, things kept getting stranger. At one point, one roommate who was home alone got out of the shower, looked into the mirror to start shaving, and noticed that someone else stepped out of the shower behind him and left the room. He searched the house, but couldn't find anyone else home at the time. Later on, a different roommate had several items go missing out of his room, including his keys and a pocket knife. He later found them in our microwave. Again, no one else was home at the time. Me, personally, I got home on a day when nobody else was at the house for the next couple of hours in between classes. There was a folding chair on the front porch next to the door, and I had an armload of books. I set the books down on the chair, unlocked, and pushed open the front door, turned and picked up the books, and when I went to walk into the house, the door slammed in my face. I thought the wind had caught the door and went to open it, but discovered that the door had locked itself again, both handle and deadbolt. Last of all, 3 of us were sitting together on a couch watching TV when we heard a loud, heavy thud, as though someone had been dragged off a bed in a back bedroom. All 3 of us later confirmed that we could distinctly hear both footsteps walking through the house as well as the sounds of something heavy being dragged behind. Last of all, the back door opened and slammed shut, even though we were all in the living room and there was supposed to be no one else in the house. A week later, we started to smell gas in the house. We called the authorities in the middle of the night and they searched the house with us, waiting on the front lawn. Finally, they told us that they couldn't find a gas leak and asked us to open the basement. We had never been in there, at our landowner's request, but since the fire department was asking, we opened the garage door. Right in front of us was a Honda Shadow motorcycle with a large pool of gasoline underneath it, where the gas tank had apparently leaked underneath it and the rest of the house. The firefighters saw this and decided to leave, while we were left to look around the rest of the basement. Most of what we found was shelves and shelves of canned vegetables, but in the very middle of the floor, under everyone's bedrooms, was a mortuary table and a second device. I'm still not sure what the second device was. It was cylindrical, with a small viewport on the front door. It seemed to have some places in the back for hoses or pipes to connect to it, although nothing was attached when we found it. It was about the right size for a couple of 2 liters of soda to fit inside. Soon after, we found out that our landowner worked night shifts at a local hospital. Whatever it might have been, we decided that enough was enough and we all decided to move out as soon as our leases were up. I was the last one there, and I promise that the last 7 days I spent there alone are the longest days I've spent anywhere. I am a self-described cynic who doesn't believe in the supernatural, but I can also admit when I have absolutely no explanation for a set of events. I'm sure that some people will have ideas, something to explain everything that happened to me now that many years have passed, but I don't need their explanations anymore. I just accept that being in old houses alone is not a good idea, and do my best to avoid them altogether. Case notes for the bonus file: ghosts, gas leaks, and basement secrets. This would be very creepy indeed, and I've never lived somewhere where in my life we've moved around so many times growing up with my parents, and then after with my mom. I don't know, 15 times at least. We never went somewhere where there was an area that was off limits. I've heard of this happening sometimes, but that would be odd. I guess with good rent, it's not really a big deal. If you never went in there, I don't know if the landlord ever came over, but if there was a vehicle in there, a motorcycle, gas expires. So if you were there for months or years, it would be odd that it would just leak randomly like that. And it wouldn't even, I don't think there would be a smell, or maybe it would be a diffused smell. So I'm just wondering if maybe the landlord came in there sometimes, and maybe the landlord was responsible for some of these oddities. Maybe it wasn't just a ghost, or maybe there was no ghost at all, and it was just a weird landlord deliberately messing with you. Because it's not too hard to make lights flicker. Like if you have access to the circuit box, you just slightly push it back and forth. But the most disturbing thing would be hearing the thud of a body, and also hearing it being dragged around. Now maybe that was a spirit, reliving a certain memory that they had. Again, spirits are mostly bound to Earth, I think, by very strong emotions or events that happen that were just jarring, surprising. You could have multiple spirits bound together. Maybe someone who was abducted, a killer, and also the victim spirit that were just bound together, like rippling together in the space-time continuum. Eventually they'll fade, I think, but they're just reliving the event that was traumatizing or shocking to both of them. So I expect if you stayed there longer, you would hear the exact same thing, the thud and the body being dragged. If it is indeed a spirit. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just a weird landlord. That's possible. But yeah, if it's a spirit, it's a repeating pattern. Now time for the quote of the day. No matter how old you are, there's always something good to look forward to. Lynn Johnston. Well, this again tethers back to mystery. If you live long enough, and you just do the same things over and over, then life will become dull, right? Because there's no mystery left in your life, none that you're pursuing. There's so much information and knowledge out there in the universe. And even if we lived 1,000,000 years, we wouldn't know it all. It's not that life ever gets boring. It's that people box themselves into a corner. Just stop living. Stop caring about the unknown, the novel, the new. So you need to actively try to pursue those interesting new things that you never experienced before. So there's a show called Forever. It's kind of a crime procedural, but the twist is the main character is a mortician or, analyzes bodies and helps cops with details, but he can't die. Or rather, he does die, but if he dies, he just reappears hours later in a body of water, whatever's nearby. He's always reborn. It's almost like a phoenix, but instead of ashes, he's reborn in water. But he's lived for a few centuries, and he's like bored of life, nothing matters. But a few centuries, that's nothing. There's so many things, especially if you live that long, society is evolving with you. So there's always something new to experience and learn. I just think people discount immortality because they think they get bored and life is what we make of it. And there's more than enough sandbox out there to explore that you can't get bored unless you want to be. So don't get bored. Go try something new. You'll love it. Or maybe you won't, but that in of itself is good. You learn something new about yourself. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.